The Allen Lund Company continues to support the owner-operators of OOIDA. Thank you for what you do, and stay safe.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
A while back, the U.S. Department of Transportation put out a notice asking for input in terms of what rules or regulations could be rolled back. Truckers most certainly have a list, and OOIDA does as well. I'll find out what some of the issues that might be considered are from OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. We're into a new tax year, and experts are encouraging you to start the year out organized and on top of things. Landline Now senior correspondent Ashley Blackford speaks with Barry Fowler of Trucker Tax Tools to get some advice on how to make your filings as smooth as possible. And finally, the U.S. Department of Labor is taking a look at the issue of worker classification, or to put it another way, whether a particular person is an employee or an independent contractor. Now they've issued guidance on how companies can proceed. I'll fill in the blanks with Bryce Mungen of OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today. More trucking jobs were added to the U.S. economy last month, more than 1,000 in fact. That's according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which said it was the fourth monthly increase over the past 6 months. The trucking industry has been mostly purging itself of truckers in recent years after a flood of new drivers entered the market in the wake of the pandemic. However, the looming threat of tariffs and a growing trade war with China have been propping up the numbers in recent months as shippers and receivers try to get ahead. Since last October, employment in trucking is up by 10,000 jobs, with most of those gains coming in March. David Spencer, Vice President of Market Intelligence at Arrive Logistics, told Landline that Chinese imports and exports are grinding to just a trickle, potentially putting downward pressure on trucking jobs in May. Across all industries, the U.S. gained 177,000 jobs in April, beating expectations, and the unemployment rate remained unchanged at 4.2%. Thousands of truck drivers who received their DOT physicals in Houston are in danger of having their CDL downgraded. Last month, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration removed 2 chiropractors from its National Registry of Certified Medical Examiners, Doctors Jenny Lee and Dustin Mai. That means more than 15,000 commercial motor vehicle drivers who got Department of Transportation physicals from either doctor between March of 2023 and March of 2025 need to obtain a new medical certificate. The deadline to do that is this Saturday, May 10th. If a driver fails to get a new certificate by that date, they run the risk of a CDL downgrade. FMCSA said it sent letters to the affected drivers. Those needing to schedule a DOT physical can find a doctor on the FMCSA website. About 38,000 medical examiners are included in the National Registry. A former trooper with the Massachusetts State Police could be headed to prison over his involvement in a CDL bribery scheme. We told you last year about 6 people, including 4 state troopers, who had been arrested and charged in a years-long scheme that involved giving out CDLs to people who didn't pass the skills test in exchange for cash and gifts. One of those troopers, Gary Cedarquist, was found guilty by a federal jury in Boston last week. The charges included 2 counts of conspiracy to commit extortion and 1 count of extortion, along with mail fraud and falsifying records. He's set to be sentenced in July. Prosecutors think up to 40 applicants received passing scores when they hadn't earned them. Of the 6 defendants, 4 have pleaded guilty. A Mississippi truck stop was recently busted for selling illegal substances, providing a reminder for truckers in the process. It happened last week at the 45 truck stop in Corinth, Mississippi. The Alcorn County Sheriff's Office says it was getting complaints about the sale of illegal substances there and carried out multiple undercover operations. After carrying out a search warrant, deputies say they seized more than 2,000 bottles of products that contain kratom, which can produce opioid and stimulant-like effects. Clerks at the store were cited. The owner was arrested on charges of possession with intent to distribute and possession of a controlled substance. It's a good reminder for truckers that even if you see something being sold inside a truck stop, that doesn't mean it's legal, especially for CDL holders. Memorial Bridge in Portsmouth, New Hampshire needs a safety assessment sooner rather than later. That's according to both of New Hampshire's U.S. senators and both of its U.S. representatives. In a letter to the Federal Highway Administration, the members of Congress urged the agency to work with New Hampshire DOT to review and respond to a recent bridge assessment report conducted by the National Transportation Safety Board. In it, 68 bridges across 19 states were identified as being vulnerable. The Memorial Bridge, which opened more than 100 years ago, was one of them. Nearly half of the trucks inspected during a recent roadside inspection checkpoint in Central California were placed out of service. It happened last week in San Benito County. The California Highway Patrol says it initiated the checkpoint following complaints from the community. Just 13 commercial motor vehicles were inspected, but 6 were placed out of service. There were 26 violations in all, with half a dozen citations issued. Canada-based Premier Bulk Systems is growing. The company is acquiring liquid bulk carrier Longhorn Transportation, adding 30 trucks and 45 tankers in the process. Terms of the deal were not announced. A fuel shortage has led to a fuel emergency declaration for the state of Kansas. State officials say long lines at fuel terminals are causing supply chain disruptions. Fuel haulers are granted relief from hours of service and other requirements under the emergency. Those are set to expire on May 12th unless they are extended. And finally, an endorsement for cookies. They're delicious, of course, but can also serve another purpose, apparently. Just ask Kristen Savage and her dog Ringo. UPI reports that the Florida woman and her 13-pound Chihuahua mix were walking near their home in Sanford when a bear came out of nowhere. Savage said the bear was especially interested in Ringo, so she took to spinning him around to keep him away. She eventually fell to the ground and then remembered something that may have saved her and Ringo. Here's what she told Fox 35 Orlando.
I threw the bag at her and she stopped for a minute. She went towards us, then she stopped and went back and sniffed the cookies. As soon as she was distracted by the cookies, I ran to the front door.
Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission officials later learned that the bear was a mother and had cubs nearby. No word on whether she shared her new cookies with the little ones. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. Just about everyone who drives a truck for a living has experienced it. You arrive at the loading dock, you need to use the bathroom, and they tell you no drivers allowed. Now, Congress is aiming to do something to give you the access that you should have always had. H.R. 2514, the Trucker Bathroom Access Act, has been introduced into Congress, and it's extremely important that you call your member of the U.S. House and ask them to support the bill. You can do that by calling 202-224-3121 or by going to the website fightingfortruckers.com. Again, the bill is H.R. 2514, the Trucker Bathroom Access Act. Call 202-224-3121, or again, write a letter using the website fightingfortruckers.com. Starting Friday, Marty Ellis and OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker, will be at the Quick Trip in Tomah, Wisconsin. That's located at exit 143 on Interstate 94. Stop in, say hi to Marty, and join OOIDA for a $10 discount. Insurance is a big expense for anyone running their own trucking operation, but a bill in Nevada would make it even more expensive for truckers who work in that state. The bill, SB 180, would increase the minimum insurance requirement for intrastate truckers there to $1.5 million, double the current requirement. OOIDA contends that an increase in the minimum insurance requirements is wholly unnecessary, would do nothing to improve safety, needlessly jeopardize countless blue-collar jobs, and destroy many small and family-owned businesses. Call your member of the State Assembly today about this bill. We'll have a link to where you can find your lawmaker's contact information at our website, landlinenow.com. Next, I'll discuss an effort to roll back regulations with OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. Ashley Blackford discusses getting organized for the new tax year with Barry Fowler of Trucker Tax Tools, and we'll find out what the Department of Labor is doing on worker classification from Bryce Mungin of OOIDA. I'm Mark Rettig, and this is Landline Now.
At Truck Stop, we built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on Truckstop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Firestone's FD694 drive tire for long haul and regional applications now delivers 126,000 more removal miles than the Yokohama TY517 MC2. Contact your Firestone commercial dealer to learn more.
A while back, the U.S. Department of Transportation put out a notice asking for input in terms of what rules or regulations could be rolled back. Truckers most certainly have a list, and OOIDA does as well. Welcome back to Landline Now. This is Regulatory Roundup, and I'm Mark Rettig. I'm joined as always by OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. Jay, how are you doing?
Doing well, Mark. Good to be with you.
Well, glad to have you here. This was all kind of a result of another executive order. There's a lot of them out there. What precisely did the president call for in that order?
Yeah, so, pretty much right away after taking office in January, as he pledged to do, President Trump, unleashed some executive orders to look at government efficiency, look at unleashing prosperity through deregulation. And kind of on the heels of a couple of those executive orders from January, the Department of Transportation has issued a specific request for information seeking comments to assist DOT in identifying existing regulations, guidance, paperwork requirements, and other regulatory obligations that can be modified or repealed to ensure that DOT can meet safety but also achieve some meaningful burden reduction. So kind of a very comprehensive, broad request that DOT is really wanting to hear from industry stakeholders about how what DOT can target to improve the lives of truckers on the road right now.
There was an interesting list that DOT put out as part of this notice of some of the factors that they wanted people to consider in coming up with lists of regulations. And I noticed on there, for example, unlawful delegations of legislative power, undue burdens on small business. Can you tell us some of the others that are on there?
Yeah, regulations that are based on anything than the best reading of the underlying statute authority or prohibition, regulations that harm the national interest by impeding technology innovation, infrastructure development, disaster response, and then kind of the key one that you mentioned, regulations that impose undue burdens on small business and impede private enterprise and entrepreneurship. DOT kind of also lays out about a dozen specific questions kind of targeting various regulations and different aspects of those, asking about, is DOT collecting, gathering, analyzing data in the most efficient way possible? And that's certainly something that we are providing some response on as well. So the key thing here is the comment period ends today, Monday, May 5th, 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. So still have a bit of time to comment, and can kind of comment in a couple of different ways on this one. Certainly the docket number is DOT-SOT-2025-0026. And then on this one, you can also just send a brief or a long email to transportationregulatoryinfo@dot.gov. So you just want to shoot an email on this, kind of a different aspect to try and get some more feedback on this request for information.
And folks, we will have all that information on our website, landlinenow.com. So if you didn't have a chance to write it down, we've got it all taken care of for you. Jay, I want to get into the meat of this, of course, which is what some of the areas really, really need some type of reform or rollback. And OOIDA, one of the big ones right now, I think, has got to be English proficiency, the basic ability to read and speak and understand English. And tell us a little bit about what OOIDA is wanting to do in that area.
Well, certainly this was one that we were going to highlight. And then, last week, the president announced a very important executive order. And really, this all goes back with safety at the highest priority. And, there are regulations under 391.11 that commercial driver can only be qualified to drive if they can read and speak the English language sufficiently to converse with the general public, understand highway traffic signs and signals in English, respond to official inquiries, make entries on reports and records, being able to communicate with law enforcement, commercial vehicle inspectors, and emergency personnel as well. And this had been removed from the out-of-service criteria since 2015. It's not seemed like it was prioritized by law enforcement in that period, and I think there's been a lot of discussion about returning it to do so, and that's exactly what the executive order issued last week begins to do. That executive order outlines procedures that will reinstate the English proficiency violations back into the out-of-service criteria. We saw some actions from CVSA to kind of begin that process last week at the CVSA workshop. 60 days is kind of the timeline laid out in the executive order where FMCSA will formally rescind the guidance issued in 2015, removing the violations from the out-of-service criteria, and also expecting some updated guidance on how inspection protocols and procedures for law enforcement moving forward. So big win there on the executive order. We comment on that, really making sure that this stays a priority and that DOT, FMCSA, CVSA kind of finish the job here over the next 60 days. Another kind of aspect to this is the growth and escalation of states issuing non-domiciled CDLs. And the executive order also touches on that to kind of conduct a review and really determine more information about how many of these non-domiciled CDLs are being issued in different states. So that's definitely a big priority here in the short term for DOT and FMCSA.
Another issue kind of interested me when I saw it on the list because there actually isn't a regulation in place yet, but speed limiters came up there. And what is the reason that that's on the list, considering that there isn't a current regulation?
Well, we saw sort of out of the blue back in 2022, spring of 2022, FMCSA reopened that speed limiter rulemaking process after it kind of went away for the long-term regulatory section of the regulatory agenda after an initial proposal in 2016. And we are calling on DOT to formally withdraw the proposed rulemaking that FMCSA considers. First and foremost, again, safety concerns with any proposed speed limiter mandate, creating speed differentials between commercial motor vehicles and other vehicles on the road, increased interactions between truck drivers and other road users, has demonstrated that those increased interactions with the speed differentials are going to increase the likelihood of crashes. We've also heard from FMCSA directly that a speed limiter mandate is going to unfairly impact small businesses. So number of concerns with the speed limiter mandate. We're telling DOT as they consider deregulatory action through this public comment period that we believe withdrawing this proposed mandate would be an ideal way to achieve meaningful burden reduction right out of the gate. So we want to see this discussion of any speed limiter mandate go away once and for all.
Let's talk about one here that's kind of the opposite of the direction that everything else is going, and that's something that OOIDA would like to see enforced and perhaps even expanded, which is broker transparency. And considering this is kind of a regulation about doing away or rolling back regulations. Why was it that OOIDA chose to put this on their list?
Yeah, so one of the questions that DOT asked about was, are there any regulations that can be modernized to better accomplish their objective? And broker transparency is a regulation that is on the books. 371.3 regulations that are designed to provide transparency that are routinely evaded by brokers or simply have not been enforced by FMCSA. And these regulations have been on the books for decades. Back in 2020, we petitioned FMCSA to update those regulations, modernize them to ensure that this information is transmitted electronically to motor carriers, and also to ensure that brokers and freight forwarders can't include in their contracts waivers that would basically allow the status quo to continue and have motor carriers waive their rights to transparency information. And within the last 5 years, there's been a number of discussions, listening sessions, public comment periods, and stakeholder outreach. And then fall of last year, we saw FMCSA put out an initial proposal that would take steps to improve broker transparency and update and modernize these 371.3 regulations. So we're telling DOT now that if you improve and update these regulations, there's going to be a lot more efficiency, more of a level playing field between motor carriers and brokers. Frankly, FMC, a lot of these disputes, if you have a sufficient broker transparency rule that is enforced, a lot of these disputes between carriers and brokers are going to be able to be taken care of on their own without FMCSA getting involved. So we are encouraging DOT to advance this rulemaking process, thinking that if they can do that, it's going to improve economic equality across the board, and DOT is not going to have their hand in every single broker and carrier dispute.
We've only got a couple of minutes left, Jay, and there's a lot more on this list. I don't think we're going to be able to do more than just touch on a few of these major high points, but there is one other in the last couple of minutes we have left I did want to get to, and I think you did too, which is hours of service. A lot to talk about here, but what are the main points that OOIDA would like to see rolled back or changed or modified?
So under the Trump administration in 2020, FMCSA did finalize a number of hours of service improvements, mainly related to the 30-minute rest breaks, split sleeper berth provisions. And those changes, have been proven helpful, but they do not fully solve all the safety and efficiency challenges associated with current hours of service rules. And these rules really that dictate a driver's work schedule are overly complex, do not provide enough flexibility, and kind of put drivers out on the road, when they're not feeling 100%. And we want to see some more improvements be implemented to make the hours of service more efficient, give drivers more control over the daily schedule. And that includes implementing pilot programs to give drivers a pause on their 14-hour on-duty period, where once per day they can take a break or take a pause of between 30 minutes and 3 hours. And then also another pilot program looking at even more split sleeper berth options, including 6-4 and 5-5. So still all about flexibility and efficiency here, and further improving hours of service regulations.
Okay. Well, Jay, we have run out of time. There's so many more things on this list, but hopefully truckers will jump in here and let FMCSA know some of the things they'd like to see rolled back or modified. But in the meanwhile, thank you very much for all the information.
All right. Get those comments in. This is a big one.
Okay. I've been talking with OOIDA's Jay Grimes. And again, folks, we will have information on how you can comment at landlinenow.com. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Dispatch, I picked up that load of steel, so I'm ready to roll.
Sounds good. Remember, we're getting paid by weight, so make sure to use a CAT scale.
I wouldn't weigh anywhere else.
Forget Miss accuracy when your truck on a cat scale.
Penske is the trusted source for quality used trucks. Whether you search our website, call our sales staff, or bid at our online auction, you are sure to find the right used truck for your business. Visit PenskeUsedTrucks.com to view our inventory and learn more.
Landline now. Welcome back. Barry Fowler joins me now. He is the founder of Trucker Tax Tools. Barry, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I always enjoy working with OOIDA and Landline and helping our truckers out there.
Now, before we dive into all the wonderful tips that I know you're about to share, talk to me about what is it that you do?
At Trucker Tax Tools, we are a bookkeeping and tax company set up directly to help truckers nationwide save money on their taxes, be more efficient, and give them time with their family by us doing their bookkeeping for them. And we keep prices really, really low. We start at $25 a week for our bookkeeping. So we try to make it convenient, we try to make it easy, and we try to give you your life back, at least the life when you're at home, and then you're not having to deal with it when you're sitting in the truck either on your downtime.
Now, your focus is on, truck drivers and their taxes. Why would that be more of a benefit to go to someone like yourself who understands the industry when it comes to taxes as opposed to maybe just a regular accountant?
Well, you got it right. Somebody that understands the industry, specializes in the industry, knows the ins and outs, about your trailer, your tractor, what you do on the road, how to calculate your per diems, and making sure you're getting every single write-off that's allowed for truckers. And that's also why, when OOIDA Foundation puts on the Truck to Success seminar, I'm there to speak as well and talk about owner-operators, all about taxes, bookkeeping, and saving money. Whether you do it yourself or whether you use us, you got to have the knowledge to be able to save as much money as possible. Because at the end of the day, it's how much you keep in your pocket, not how much you give to the government.
Now, April 15th has come and gone. I'm curious, how was this year in the tax world?
Well, it was a little slower with people getting information in, but everybody's looking to find ways to save money, whether it's minimizing their taxes as much as possible, even putting money into retirement. And we're one of the few companies out there that actually will talk to truckers about planning someday to get out of the truck and to retire. So you got to find ways to save more money. And that includes saving money on taxes, whether it's federal income tax, state income tax, Social Security, Medicare tax. All of those keep adding up and keep taking money away from you. You got to find ways to reduce that and pay less in taxes.
What were some of the worst ways you saw people be unprepared?
Well, we get all kinds of people that come to us after the fact that haven't maybe done their bookkeeping, and you can tell that their numbers are just guesstimates. We've had a few clients that came to us with complete round numbers, and that means, their income was $400,000, their, fuel expense was $60,000. When you get round numbers like that, you're setting yourself up for an audit. I mean, there's not a single books that I have done for truckers out there that every number ends with 00. You can round to zero at times, but, just not having all the deductions there. Or those that, hey, don't even read their settlement statements, and they're just giving us guesstimates, or they don't even know that they can even take per diems because they've been dealing with somebody else that knows nothing about trucking. And are looking for all those expenses. And that's what we do. We're always looking to help save money on taxes, make sure you're getting every deduction that you have. And tax knowledge is important, and understanding how to do it for over-the-road truckers is extremely important as well.
What tips do you have, for somebody, we're kind of in a new tax year, what tips do you have for them to start doing now to make their taxes easier next year?
Hire a bookkeeping service, whether you hire Trucker Tax Tools and go to truckertaxtools.com or you go to somebody else, make sure they have knowledge of trucking. But they'll help you find ways to save money for taxes. But if you want to do it yourself, keep your receipts. Have one checking account that is just for business. So whether you're a sole proprietor or even an LLC, sometimes you're trying to run everything out of your personal account. Well, it makes it a lot simpler for your accounting and your bookkeeping side of it if you're running all your business out of a business account, so you can know that what's going through that account is business and you're not doing personal and business through there. And if you happen to go through an audit, then the IRS is looking at that account and you can pretty much guarantee that everything you're doing through there is going to be business if you keep it that way. And it makes your life a heck of a lot easier than when you're commingling in funds between business and personal and mixing the two together.
What are your recommendations, for someone who is kind of maybe behind in taxes? They're kind of all over the place. They don't know where they're at. What do you recommend they do?
Well, we had a gentleman just call, I guess it was Monday, and trying to get caught up on his 23 taxes. And as we were talking to him, he was like, well, I also owe another $100,000. And we were like, oh, wow. And he's like, what can you do? Well, first we got to get that 23's tax return done. We need to get 24 tax return done. And then we can work with the IRS to get you possibly an offer in compromise. Maybe it's a payment plan. Maybe it's a partial pay installment agreement. There's a lot of different options, but all those options depend on you, your income, and the ability to pay. And we're able to sit down and look at that. If you do have a tax problem or you're looking to do bookkeeping for truckers, you can call us at 877-966-2477. And we give every OOIDA member special discounts. We value that you're a member of OOIDA. We value that you're an over-the-road trucker. And we're here to help and help you.
What is often the reason that you hear from drivers or whoever's doing their bookkeeping that have gotten so behind? What's usually the reason there?
It's a snowball effect is really what it comes down to, because you get into trucking and maybe you were a W-2 driver and you get out and become an owner-operator and you don't realize that you've got to make estimated tax payments because those tax payments used to come out of your paycheck and now they don't. And then you get to filing that first year's tax return and maybe you owe $10,000 or $20,000 and you don't have the money to pay it because you didn't save it. You didn't make the estimated tax payments, so you don't file. And then the next year comes up and IRS isn't bugging you yet for that prior return, so why file this one? And it becomes kind of a snowball because you owed 10 or 20, and then you add another 20 or 30 the next year, plus penalties and interest, and now it's just rolling downhill and getting bigger, and you just don't know what to do with the debt. And sometimes it's just easier to stick your head in the sand and ignore it, or, hey, just hide behind a rock and hope they don't find me. I'm on the road anyway. Who's going to find me? But that's not the way to deal with it. You actually got to stop. Let's talk about it. There's no judgment here. We understand problems happen, but you got to find a way to get out from underneath that weight of that debt, because it is adding just a lot of stress to you.
And it's probably fair to say the IRS one day will get there, right? They'll find you.
Oh, they will find you. They will end up levying your bank account, putting a lien on everything that you own. They will make your life miserable. They are, the biggest, largest, baddest collection agency, and not to scare people, but it is true. They do have the wherewithal to come after you and find you. And that's why I always tell people, hey, it's better to get in front of it and start handling it now. Even if we've got to put you on a very low payment plan and it's going to be there till you can find a way to either make more money and be able to pay it down, or the statute of limitations run out and the debt goes away. There's a lot of different options. So, you got to put the trust that we will help you, we will guide you, and we'll give you every possible option you have to save money, including penalty abatements and everything that we can do.
You mentioned something that I kind of want to go back on. As far as, I'm sure people are, if they are behind, I'm sure they're embarrassed. But like you said, calling you, you're not going to judge them. You're there to help, right?
Absolutely. I mean, sometimes the IRS is just wrong. Sometimes you filed tax returns with somebody that didn't know anything about trucking, and we can go in and amend those returns and get rid of a lot of the debt. Maybe you've gone through an audit even, and you lost in the audit because you didn't provide the information, and we can go back and get audit reconsideration. We've done that before. We took a trucking company that went through an audit that lost the audit, owed about $1.5 million. And their tax debt, once we went in and did a audit reconsideration, we got them down to owing $200,000 and saved them a lot of money. It's all, making sure that we handle it. So don't come to us being embarrassed or worried what we're going to think. We're here to help. And there's no judgment ever placed against you, because we understand, what it's like to have gone through these problems and to have to deal with somebody with the IRS who has no empathy, and all they want to do is collect every dollar they possibly can from you. And it feels really bad when you're dealing with them. We try to make it as easy as possible and help you every step of the way.
All right. How do you recommend drivers organize their receipts?
Well, most of them just crumple them up and throw them in the truck, and then they've got to find them. The easiest way is have a folder. Each month when you get out on the road, have a folder for that month, and put your receipts in that folder. At least you have them together. If you want to be really good about it, have a expanding folder that has different categories in there. Between office supplies, truck supplies, fuel or maintenance. If you're getting a settlement statement, and a lot of this stuff goes on your settlement statement, make sure you're filing that settlement statement away, either in a file folder there in the truck, or even better yet, you're getting in your email, download it to your phone and set up folders on your phone where you've got your settlement statements, where you can easily find them for each year to be able to go back and look at them. And then I tell people, read. Look at the settlement statements. Trucking companies are not perfect. They're going to find every expense that they're going to charge it back against you. Make sure they're doing it right. So look at your settlement statements. Those become important too.
All right. Barry, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Hey, not a problem. I always enjoy being here and helping. Anytime we're here, we can help. We're going to give you as much guidance as possible. Now, one thing I tell everybody, if you're going to be a W-2 driver and decide you're going to be an owner-operator, you really, really need to go see OOIDA's Truck to Success seminar. I believe it's offered in late October. Mm-hmm. I'll be there. I hope everybody else will be there. Love to have as many truckers, even if you're looking to expand your truck and expand your business. Truck to Success is a great place to come and learn.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was Barry Fowler talking about best tax practices as we head into a new tax year. To hear more from him, you can always pick up a copy of Landline Magazine, where he always shares some helpful tips. For more information on trucker tax tools, you can visit truckertaxtools.com or call 833-418-5723. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. Stay tuned for more after this.
Protect your diesel engine with Howe's Diesel Defender. Restore vital lubricity, eliminate injector deposits, and boost fuel economy by 5% or more. Power, performance, protection, all in one. Howe's Diesel Defender, available now.
With rising costs affecting everyone, switching to a genuine Vibertech TVD viscous damper can help you avoid expensive repairs and downtime. Save money and keep your truck running smooth with Vibertech TVD. Recommended replacement at 500,000 miles or 15,000 hours.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline now. Welcome back. The U.S. Department of Labor is taking a look at the issue of worker classification, or to put it another way, whether a particular person is an employee or an independent contractor. Now they've issued guidance on how companies can proceed. Here to fill in the blanks is Bryce Mungen of OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office. Bryce, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Mark, for having me.
Before we get into the current situation, I feel like just to kind of get people into the mindset, I wanted to go over a little history on this, because over the past few presidential terms, we've kind of had a seesaw effect on this, back and forth and back and forth. Can you walk us through what's happened up to the current situation?
Yeah, so taking things back to the first Trump administration in 2021, they issued for the first time a regulation regarding how workers should be classified under the FLSA, whether they are employees or independent contractors. Up to that point, it had been decided by guidance from the Department of Labor and by court precedents. But for the first time, the administration put forward a rule. Then once the Biden administration took over, they eventually rescinded that rule and then issued their own rule classifying workers as either independent contractors or employees. To oversimplify things, we generally were okay with the 2021 rule from the Trump administration, but we did have concerns with one provision they included in there. We'll get into those details in a minute, but basically said, if a carrier or a hiring entity is doing something because of safety, and they specifically talk about speed limiters, then that's not controlling someone. And we think that that's something that carriers could use to micromanage the independent contractors they hire. The 2024 rule, in contrast, we were generally supportive of. We provided a lot of comments and concerns and requests for clarification as part of that process. And the Department of Labor actually listened to us on it and did a pretty good job. And basically where we feel we are at right now with the 2024 rule is it takes us to a place where we were before the 2021 rule, where we know that owner-operators were able to work as independent contractors. And we don't think they're should be, and we have not seen any major disruptions from this 2024 rule. So thank you for indulging me on this. I know it gets complicated, but to kind of set the table where we are now is we don't see any major concerns or problems with the regulations as they are.
So talking about that 2024 rule that is currently on the books, just to clarify, can you walk us through for a particular individual what determines under that rule if an individual is an independent contractor or an employee?
Yes. So the 2024 rule looks at, they call it the totality of the circumstances. So it's looking at all these different factors. There's 6 factors they've identified. That includes the opportunity for profit or loss, depending on your managerial skill, the investment by the worker, the nature and degree of control over work and your working terms, your skill and initiative, and there's 2 other factors as well. But basically, the test looks at all of these and asks the question, is this worker in business for themselves, or are they dependent on another business or like the employer for work? And after asking that question, looking through all the circumstances, if you're in business for yourself, then you are an independent contractor. And we've looked extensively through those factors, looked through how those factors have been interpreted in previous court cases, and we very strongly believe that, for the most part, if you're in a traditional lease arrangement as an independent contractor, an independent owner-operator, you should be able to work as an independent contractor under this test.
So, all that said, late last week, the Department of Labor announced it's not going to enforce the 2024 rule. So they kind of give an idea of what they're going to do instead. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, and kind of sort of. There's a clarification here. So they say they're kind of sort of. They recognize that the 2024 rule is still in effect, but they also say there are challenges to this in federal court, and what they say is they're not going to apply the 2024 rules analysis in current enforcement matters. So it's a bit of a gray area that they've kind of left us with. What they say they're instead doing is returning to guidance from 2008. So there's prior to the 2021 rule and prior to this rule, they're looking to guidance from a number of years ago now. And so that is what they say they are going to use to determine whether someone's an independent contractor or an employee. Again, they say we recognize the 2024 rule is still in effect, but we're also going to use kind of another sort of analysis to enforce this. So it's a bit of a gray area.
So looking at that 2008 guidance, did I get the year right there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I didn't think we were going to go back that far. But looking at that from the perspective of an owner-operator, let's say leased onto a carrier, does this change anything about their situation?
Not that we can see. You know, the test in the 2008 guidance, they put forward 7 factors, but they are very similar to the 6 factors laid out in the 2024 test. And I think what's important, too, is that the 2008 guidance reiterates that there is no single rule or test for determining whether an individual is an independent contractor or an employee. So it's the total situation, it's all the activity, it's looking at all the factors. So the 2008 guidance sounds very similar to what's been in place under the 2024 rule with the 2024 guidance. So it doesn't seem that much should change. The Department of Labor also said they're going to be enforcing or kind of using a guidance letter from 2019, but that deals a lot with basically your like Uber, your Lyfts, your digital marketplace type apps. It's really kind of specific to those businesses and not dealing with the trucking industry. So big picture, this announcement doesn't seem to change much in the near term for classification.
You mentioned earlier the previous guidance that dealt with the concept of control. And that, of course, is one of the big concerns that OOIDA has had throughout this is the idea that your carrier can force you to use a speed limiter as part of your contract. And that's not, telling you what speed you can run is not control, which I find violates common sense.
Right.
But that said, under this current guidance, is that a problem here?
It does not appear to be, no. And it doesn't seem that this guidance kind of establishes, I've kind of talked about it. I call it, like the safety loophole that was in that 2021 rule where they said if you're doing something for safety or going above and beyond to ensure safety, then that's not control. That's not my reading on this 2008 guidance. So I don't think those issues are in play with this.
Okay. So at this point, obviously, we still have the 2024 regulation in place. We now have this new 2025 guidance. Things appear to be stable and workable for owner-operators. Do we know, or have they indicated, when we should expect a more permanent regulation from the Department of Labor spelling out what the Trump administration wants to do here?
Yeah, we don't have an exact date. It does say that they are continuing to review the 2024 rule, and we know that it's something that they want to modify. So we will see. I'm frankly not sure how quickly this may or may not come, but I would expect that we see a new, different rule, probably returning to something closer to the 2021 rule at some point in the coming months or so. It's hard to say exactly with everything that the administration is working on, but they have indicated that this is something they want to do.
Okay. Well, as new developments occur, we'll check back in with you. But in the meanwhile, Bryce, thank you very much for all the information.
Yes, thank you, Mark.
I've been talking with Bryce Mungen of OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office. And folks, we always urge you to call your members of Congress about these important issues. And of course, for owner-operators, this is an important issue. Call your members of Congress at 202-224-3121 or write a letter using the website fightingfortruckers.com. That's our program for today. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome,
and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us! Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.